Well, hello, hello. Welcome to the Fine Print. This is our inaugural episode as the Fine Print. I don't have a cool intro yet, but we do have a cool new logo, so that's a step. I don't know about you, Leah, but it's a crazy busy time for me. It's finals week, graduation. My daughter's school is coming to an end, so I think I've had a concert, a play, dress rehearsals, her extracurricular dress rehearsals. I think we've done all of April was all month long was rehearsals, performance, rehearsal, performance. So yeah, we'll get to it, is what I'm saying. How
Yeah,
are you doing?
it's been a crazy busy time. Work and personal and everything else. It's
So
like a thousand things happening at once.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a naturally a busy time heading into summer. It's wedding season. I'm not invited to any weddings, but I just know from working in Vegas that it's wedding season and
Mhm.
graduations, and that's like travel now. I mean, if it was expensive last month, it's really expensive this month. Speaking of travel, did you hear that there is another plane crash, a small plane? And the Newark air traffic controllers, 30 of them, walked off the job because they're like, yo, we can't, this is not safe. I'm out. And so I
Oh
don't
my
know what's
goodness, it seems
happening.
like there's
I
been
know.
one a
Oh,
week or
go.
more.
Yeah. My daughter usually heads up north to New York to spend like a week or two with my parents and my sister. I'm really apprehensive of sending her up there. Um,
Well, I think
I, it,
wasn't there a group of air traffic controllers that said it's not safe to fly now?
yeah, that was those were the Newark ones that walked off
It
the
was
job.
Newark ones. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're telling you it's not safe, oh my goodness.
I didn't like Newark Airport to begin with, but if they're telling me it's not safe,
Right.
but
It's like your doctor
so
saying it's
yeah,
not safe
I'm
to take the
sorry, go ahead.
medication.
Yeah,
It's like your
if
doctor
the
telling you it's not safe to take the
doctors,
medication or do a surgery.
oh, I didn't know Newark got a makeover. I'm really just picking on it because it's New Jersey. I mean, I did notice like it always felt like flights out of Newark, whether it was connection or like a departure or arrival type thing, Newark is always late, always. And or that's how it always felt like to me. So I try to avoid Newark, but I make fun of them more because they're from Jersey. I just I don't know. That never left. You can take the girl out of New York, but not her making fun of New Jersey, which I yeah. But it's a love. It's I make fun of them, but it's like I'm from New York and can not everybody can make fun of Jersey. I get really defensive of New Jersey when other people start making fun of them.
Oh, it's like I can pick
Um,
on my little brother, but you can't.
yeah, it's like yeah, particularly like the tri-state area, um, where if you don't know where the tri-state area, it's New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Kind of all they don't all touch each other, obviously, but like they're well within an hour of one another, and if there was no traffic, probably 20 minutes. You could get from the state line of New York, New Jersey to Connecticut from that one little. So let
It's
me
okay. I feel
get
the same.
into. Oh, Cynthia
Growing up in
said that
Texas, we
you're.
like to beat up on Arkansas, but I get defensive when other people beat up on Arkansas because it's like my kid brother. I can tease you, and you can't.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like states like that. Like couplings that kind of have like this sister, state relationship. Except Alabama, Georgia. Nobody cares in Georgia if you make fun of Alabama. At least in West Georgia. Cynthia said that your sound it sounded a little like garbled at points, but it was audible to me. Um,
I tried changing
I
the
don't.
mic. Does that help?
It's a little crackly on my end, but it's not terrible.
Welcome to rural America.
Yeah, if it's the broadband or lack thereof, you know, well, I guess it is what it is. Today we're gonna get into some things. The thumbnail says we're talking about the spending bill, and we will in a minute. Obviously, I'm not an economic expert. I don't claim to be. I really suggest you go look at the information that's out there on what's being proposed. Look at other experts. Lee and I were just talking about Scott Galloway. He's a really great economist who is really good at explaining things in a way that is for people like me who are, economy for dummies, and why certain groups of people do things economically. So, like, for example, the stock market fluctuations, why rich people, billionaires are like bending the knee to Trump, those kinds of things. If you follow Tony Michaels, imagine Tony Michaels as a professor and not cursing. That's Scott Galloway. So he's a little crude. He does a podcast with Kara. I don't know why I can't say her name. Kara Swisher. There we go. They do a podcast together. It's called Pivot. So it's a really great economics podcast. If you want more information on economics, that is interesting, won't put you to sleep, slightly crude, and it's just a good podcast. He was also a professor of marketing and branding. I don't know if he still is. I think he still is a professor at NYU. I don't know if that makes a difference to people, but for just other people think he's smart, not just me. They wouldn't pay him the big bucks to teach there. But so anyway, before we get into that, we're going to talk about higher ed and what's being done, because surface level, it seems like the GOP has some great ideas, and maybe they are, but if you really start looking into what they're doing and what the implications could be, I think it's probably a slightly communistic look on what, and I'll explain why I say that in a little bit. So, first off on the list is this is Inside Higher Ed. This is a publication. Okay, good. I do have an account, but I'm not going to start logging into that just yet. But they plan on cutting, and this leads into our next, I guess, segment of what we're talking about today. Basically, it is just one giant, massive chunk out of higher ed. And it's not just about taking funding away from colleges. A lot of this funding goes to really important work. So it's marketed as you're taking away, it's really marketed as you're owning the libs. And the person who wants to study basket weaving doesn't get to get a scholarship now. But it's so not that. It's not about being able to study gender studies or anything like that. It is taking money away from universities, doing some really great work. A lot of it's in the medical field. A lot of people don't realize how much medical innovation comes from the universities. It comes from international students attending these universities. Scott Galloway gives a really good explanation on international students, and he has a really clever way of describing it, the PhD pipeline, as an industry. Because when people from China, India, Europe, whoever come here to get their undergraduate, graduate, PhDs, they're paying full out-of-state tuition. they're likely getting any assistance, any, from a scholarship, definitely not a grant. So essentially, they subsidize a lot of higher education for everybody else because they were paying full tuition. So now that Trump has started kicking college students out of the country, um, or locking them up, they are, and I'm just scrolling down in this article a little bit just to show you what it's, if you want to go to it later. But let me get back out of this. There we go. So cutting this isn't hurting the libs. It's really, what's that phrase? Cutting your nose off to spite your face. It's really going to shoot us in the foot. If just Google university research and medicine, university research and AI. A lot of like the really trending innovations came from a college student, whether it's a undergrad, graduate, PhD student. So this doesn't like hurt the basket weaver or the gender studies student. This hurts everybody. And it's really sad because, so many programs are just going to go, so much is going to be undiscovered and innovated by Americans now. These scientists are going to go elsewhere, to Europe, China, India, wherever. And China already is gladly accepting scientists. Europe is gladly accepting international Americans to do innovative research so they can be the ones to discover the next big thing. And when you take this away, it's really hard to get it back. It's really like from working, and I don't even work at one of those like big name institutions. And I can just, like, my heart breaks for just rigorous academic study. So, Leah, what do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. And they're doing research on all kinds of important fields from robotics and engineering to medical. Is the sound better?
It's much better.
Okay. Um, a lot of the research we're seeing is because the professor has a grant to do research, but they're using their students to do a lot of the research work. And that's getting them incredible experience. They may get an opportunity to co author a paper and make really amazing studies. And we're not going to see that anymore with these kinds of cuts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The grad assistant, a lot of these grants also pay grad assistants, TAs, to do, particularly at the Harvards, the Yales, the Princetons. Um, so it's it's a sad day for education in general, but a really sad day. I mean, it's not in written in stone yet, but if you care about higher ed, I mean, not just for the academics, but like, I mean, if you enjoy America's place, which is already slipping out of our fingers, this doesn't come back. This takes like a decade. If we were to get a new president tomorrow, this would take probably 5 to 10 years to get our reputation back as a place for academic study.
And
Easy.
we've been slipping for quite a few decades. So rebuilding that after more substantial cuts is going to be twice as hard. From building the trust to building the infrastructure to support it.
Yeah, and what's going to start happening is cancers will be cured, or breakthrough treatments um, to extend your not just your life years but your quality of life years will be made. And when people in the United States get those cancers, because cancer doesn't know a border, or whatever, the rich will be able to go travel to China, India, Europe, Canada, wherever it is. But if you're a Joe Schmo, regular American, it's unlikely that you'll get that treatment
And even if it
unless,
does come to
like,
the US, it's going to be unaffordable.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, Joe Schmo billionaire doesn't care. That's why I hate that Americans are listening to billionaires. Like, this affects nobody wealthy. If you are wealthy, and Scott Galloway makes this point, he's like, none of this affects me. If I feel like shit gets too real here, I have no problem loading my stuff on a plane and piecing out to Canada or Europe or wherever I want to go. But this affects everyday people. And the fact that everyday people are cheering on these billionaires for taking what little they have, because Scott Galloway came from nothing, literally nothing. He got rejected by like most colleges, and I think Berkeley gave him a shot, or yeah, and or no, Berkeley turned him down. University of Chicago accepted him, like, oh, probably 50 years ago at this point. But anyway, so what is, like, if a billionaire or even just a regular billionaire is like, you know, trying to take your shit, cut government so you will have less, look from where they came from. Because most billionaires that came from nothing aren't advocating for that. Um,
Well, and that's a big problem with all the money in politics is the people making the rules and the laws are so far removed from everyday life. They've never had, one flat tire means that you can't make the rent that month, or you can't pay for your kids new glasses, or whatever the case may be. They're so removed from the lived experience of the average person.
yeah, and I'm sure there exists billionaires who came from nothing and could not have not looked back. But it's just like, when we were talking about this before the show, the happiness quotient. There's a literal, I think it's 10 million. It might be 50 million, but I think it's $10 million. That once you hit $10 million, you will not become any happier. Because with $10 million, you can solve almost every single problem that you have. I think it might be 50 million. Like, the more I'm thinking about it. And you could say, shit, I'd be happy with, let me tell you something. $1,000 would be life changing for me right now. But like, so once you hit $50 million, you could make another million or another billion. It's not going to make you any happier, because anything you need $50 million will get you. And it doesn't even have to be like literal cash. It can be like collateral, because if you have a net worth of $50 million, your life is much different than anybody. So it just becomes like, I forgot how Scott Galloway put it, but it's basically, there's a void that they're trying to fill with more money, and it's never going to be filled, because it could be narcissism, it could be childhood trauma, it could be a lot of things of what causes that void, but they try to make more and more money trying to fill a void, and it just isn't gonna. It's just, you can't fill a void when it's like internal and psychological. No amount of money can fill that void.
And
So
money will only buy you so much therapy to address that.
yeah, and more things, like, it's all, but the adverse is true too. Money doesn't buy happiness. It solves problems. That's my thing. Money can buy happiness only because it solves some problems, but you're not truly happy. There are some of the happiest people in this world are people who are impoverished and
Hmm.
choose to live that way. And so I definitely believe if you're looking for happiness and fulfillment, money can't buy that. But money can solve a lot of problems. Is the way I look at it. Because some of the richest people in the world aren't happy right now. Because they got to take away our shit. They're so twisted. Like, you don't want some college kid to get a scholarship or to be a TA because you're afraid they're going to study gender studies or some bullshit like that. It is wild to me, which goes on to what I started talking about was this. Now, I originally saw this article. Let me pull it up real quick. Here we go. So this is from CNBC. Now, this is a version of the the first article I saw, and let me get those out of the way. It doesn't have that table I was talking about, but basically, and I'll just scroll through it a little bit so you can see the bolded headlines. It puts caps on student loans with a $50,000 cap on student loans. That hold that thought, kids. So then we have graduate students couldn't take out more than 100,000, which that seems like a little flipped because when you're a grad student, you're only in grad school. Most even law school, you're only in there for probably 3 years is law school. I might be wrong on that, but so if you're looking to take out money, this right, and why I said it's kind of communistic. I know doctors and lawyers who were told, through an audience, that their med school and law school loans were like $200,000. So $50,000, even, let me think about it. I think the tiny university I work in, and if you were in state, I believe you were paying around $6,000 a semester. So you're looking at, let's just say easy numbers, $12,000 a year times 4. You're right at, so basically it means you can go to my university. It's not tiny. I would say probably small to medium size. We have about 8,000 students. You can borrow up to that. So if you come from nothing, the best you can do, and that's at this moment in time, that's what you can borrow up to. And then, so if you come from nothing and you want to be a doctor, that's not happening. And students, for grad school, so law school, med school, any advanced, professional degrees, that is being made unattainable as well. More requirements for a Pell Grant. I thought to have the Pell Grant, you have to be a full-time student right now is considered 12 credit hours a semester. And you have to be a full-time student to be a Pell Grant. Pell Grant is free money the government gives to knock off some money. It's need-based, if you don't know what a Pell Grant is. And so that means they're bumping it up to 30 hours. So they're telling you that you must take a full course load to keep your Pell Grant. So what does that do? Well, it means if you're taking 15 credits, that's 5 classes a semester. It means you're not working full time with that course load. I mean, if you're 18 and can do that, more power to you. That's hard. It means if you're in the military, we're in the military. Pell Grant's not, if you want to take a shorter course load because you're National Guard, Army Reserve, that's not happening. You're not getting a Pell Grant. 15 credit hours is a lot. That 5 classes, if And I worked part-time in college and with a full course load, and that was a lot for me. But, I was 18, 19, 20 years old, so I could do it. They're missing on who is an undergraduate student. An undergraduate student isn't necessarily an 18, 19, 20-year old not working. So this makes it really challenging for people to have a job, a family.
And Allison, I was
Go,
just looking at the average cost, and according to ChatGPT, um, in-state students pay an average of $11,610 annually. Out-of-state students pay an average of $30,780 per year. That's for a state school, and that's not including, depending on your school, transportation, maybe lodging, and other things. That's just the education part.
that's an outstanding point. Outstanding point. I forgot about room and board. So, like, what are you going to do about like? So that means you're staying at best. Like, if you come from a poor family in a small town and your college, even if you stay within the state, I mean, you're looking at, I mean, it really limits you. And I think that's the intent because that's the only thing that makes sense. If this was about making college affordable, and like you would take a whole slew of different ideas, and it's clear that with the cuts and forcing universities to eliminate DEI and all of that, they want college admissions to be back to white males 18 to 21, which I think does the country an incredible disservice. Our
Allison,
productivity is
further in
up.
the study, it says it varies by state. So, for example, Pennsylvania is one of the more expensive states, and the average is 20,000 per year. In other states, it can be as low as like 13,000. So, if you can only take 50,000 over the course of your entire 4-year degree, and you're in Pennsylvania, that's only going to pay for 2 years.
Yeah, so it forces you either to find other loans, which is going to force you into private loans. And let me just tell you something, guys. Do not, if you can avoid it, do not take out a private loan to pay for college. It will fuck you. Like, it will fuck you. Um, so it's really um, screwing over people, not just like the universities too, because now to get into Harvard, you're not going to Harvard. Even if you can get in, I think their acceptance rate is like 5% at best. So even if you can get in to Harvard academically, if they don't give you some sort of financial aid, which they probably can well afford to do, but it's hard to get, you're not going to Harvard. Like
No, this says that
you're
the annual tuition fee for Harvard is 56,000.
is that just tuition or tuition, room and board?
They're saying that's the tuition fee, and they're including housing and living expenses, but that's assuming you can get housing at Harvard.
Yeah,
There's
and
limited
a
housing
lot of school
options.
a lot of schools only allow you to live on campus. What you call it? They only allow you to live on campus your first 2 years, depending on demands, student enrollment. So college all of a sudden becomes unattainable, or becoming, part of what made America great was that you could come from nothing, from nowhere, and make it to Harvard and be like a groundbreaking scientist, changing the world. That's what made us great. Now that's not, if that plan goes through, that's not possible anymore. Because finding if federal aid, which I think, and this is why we wanted to educate the public, when you have a public that is not educated, that has, think about all the benefits for, authoritarians that entails, but your country becomes less productive. And exactly, Brandon, most of us cannot afford Harvard. My parents couldn't afford Harvard. No way. I went to and it was a legit tiny college where I had $1,500 were my undergraduate loans. Now I'm looking at wage garnishment for my graduate loans, which really aren't that big compared to, a lot of other people. But um, as we digress, so um, yeah, a lot of shit ain't, and you don't know who's going to be the next scientist. That's the thing. That's what made America great. That if you were smart enough and worked hard enough, no matter where you came from, you could get to Harvard or Yale or Princeton and become that scientist that figures out how to solve brain cancer or breast cancer or genetic mapping or who knows what the future entails. So it's a real shame because that takes our place as being one of the leading, like officially. Um, so if you care about higher ed, I suggest, you know what, a survey I would love to do of universities. And I don't know, I don't think this is even possible, but I guess it would be a fun thought experiment. Like, of the people that Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all the Ivies, that they admitted, who did they think was going to be like invent the next great thing, and who actually did? Like when Mark Zuckerberg was admitted to Harvard, did they say, "Man, this kid, he's going to change the world"? Or was he just like a name and his parents could pay and it just like I would love to know that. I don't think it's possible to ever find that out, but
Well, and that's the classism of it is Cynthia makes a good point that, you go to your 2 year degree in community college and then transfer to a bigger degree, um, a bigger university, which is great. But when you're trying to compete for that job against someone whose family could pay $60,000 a year for their kid to go to Harvard, even though he was maybe not the brightest, you're going to have a hard time on paper competing with that. And
yeah.
the student loans are going to be holding you back, or the private loans are going to be holding you back from what jobs you can accept to even survive. Um, you're 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 classed out from the very start, no matter how academically gifted you are. And that sucks. Like
And
they can buy their relatively stupid kid a great education, no offense, and a incredibly bright student from a small school in the middle of nowhere whose parents don't have those kinds of resources has no chance of a similar type of education simply because of the accident of where they were born.
exactly. And and so unless Harvard gets wind of some whiz kid, which there isn't like a draft for smart kids, I wish, would that be well, actually no, there kind of are in a way, like, Westinghouse competitions and math olympiads, but you have to be a real dork, and sometimes it's suicide for a kid, social suicide, to join those clubs. I have a friend who grew up in the hoods of the projects of New York, and she had to hide how smart she was and all the academic success she was having because she would get like picked on, not just by her peers but her own family. So, like, it just really shows you, like, I don't know, it really shows their true colors. And but the best part about their plan is the loan repayment program. So I couldn't find the original article that I saw, but they want to make it so that if you owe like 30,000, or like if you owe $30,000, it's $50 a month. If it's $40,000, it's 100, and so on. And the cap is like $150,000, and that's $350 a month. But so it's a flat rate, but it's upon graduation. There's no like 6 month forbearance, or not, forbearance isn't the right word. When they don't charge you interest on them and don't expect payment, they give you 6 months to find a job, get settled somewhere, and then you start paying. Uh, they There will be none of that. So upon graduation starts day one, and day 30, you better have your 350 or $50. So that loan payment will also outclass you. And so if you want to be a teacher, you better be going to school somewhere cheap, because you ain't going to be able to afford. And what's really fucked up is that most states, teachers force you to have a master's degree. So, but the job doesn't pay enough to pay that loan. And then they often, my friend got her master's degree in 2006, and then in 2008 she was laid off. She was a music teacher. She was first to get laid off. So she had, and then like, so she has this massive loan to get her master, which she was required to get by the state to keep her teaching license and her job. And then she gets laid off from said job with this massive loan. So anyway, so you really have to think before you like, can you afford the repayment? You have to, day one, like, there's no moving around, there is no figuring it out. You really have to, if you don't have the means to, like, then it can be a real problem for you.
Well, and
So
I don't know
it
about you,
also,
but I graduated from college in June of 2001. And we got out of college thinking, oh, yeah, we'll be able to get a job. No, 9/11 happened, and we couldn't even get temp work because
yeah,
there was so many layoffs and stuff. And then the grace period ends, and they want you to get to start paying your loan back. And we couldn't even get, Walmart to hire us. And you're like, listen, I'm willing to do the work. I just need to pay
because
my
then
bills.
you're
And they're like, well, you have a
overqualified.
degree. Yeah, you're not going to stay because you have a degree. I'm going to stay because I got bills to pay, bro. Like that's how I ended up in bookstores is not because I aspired to be in retail, but because 9/11 happened and going to graduate school wasn't an option, and getting a job that would have paid my student loans wasn't an option. I had to take who would hire me. And fortunately, I was able to get into a bookstore. But we interviewed at Walmart and Target and Kmart and everywhere. And they were like, no, you have a degree. You won't stick around. You're a bad investment for us. And we're like, yo. And sure
Yeah,
enough, we
I
were one
get
of
it.
those people. We lost our apartment. We spent 6 months living with my parents trying to figure it out after, we defaulted on everything. And it wasn't from lack of trying, it's demoralizing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like they act like nobody's trying. And like, are there some people not trying? I am sure there are some. But most people don't graduate and be like, ooh, how can I get out of this? And I'm sorry, if we're a rich enough country to forgive all those billions in PPE loans from COVID, fuck you. Fuck you. I'm sorry. Like, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she had like what, several 100,000 canceled because just because she works in Congress. Must be nice. I don't have that kind of student loan debt. I have about 36,000, and you know what? I only borrowed 18 of that. The rest of it's interest that's built up.
Well, and
Which
that's the
is my
thing.
next.
Like teachers, librarians are required to have master's degrees in most states. The pay is absolute shit in most states. Most in Pennsylvania, we're largely nonprofits, so most librarians don't have any benefits at all, no pension plan, nothing like that. And you're required to have the master's degree to have the job in the first place. You barely make a living wage, and now you have this massive student loan you got to pay back. PSLF was the only thing keeping most people going, was the promise that after 10 years that could be forgiven. And they've, we all know about all the crazy loopholes trying to qualify for that. and how they
There,
stymied in the courts Biden's attempts to make it work the way it was designed to work. There's no incentive to become a teacher or another kind of public servant
none.
when you're not going to get paid anything and there's no chance that your debt's ever going to go away. I'm like
No, and
you. The amount I borrowed versus the interest I've been paying on this damn thing for 20 something years, and I still have not made a dent in the capital because of the interest.
yeah, right. And I life happened, and I had to stop paying because it was either my lights or my student loan. And imagine a lifetime of tragedy falling on you in 3 months. And say what you will, judge me. I stopped paying because I like electricity. Sorry. And I'm not sorry about it. So now, what I wanted to mention, in case you didn't know, Trump is resuming collections tomorrow. I've contacted an attorney so they don't garnish my wages. um I have not received a new notice. I don't know if legally they have to. The creditor stopped reporting on my credit report, which that's guys, if they're not reporting on your defaulted loan, you can get that off your cuz it's inaccurate. If they're reporting okay, 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 if you've checked your credit, you know what I mean. That's incorrect. So incorrect reporting can often lead to you, and I'll put a link in the description. But I'm talking to an attorney tomorrow about, it's not that I don't want to pay, it's just I don't see how garnishing my wages and my tax refund is going to be, um, you know, I just don't see how that's going to be helpful.
Well, and
Um,
the Biden fixes being trapped in court for over a year. I am 5 months away from PSLF. Not because I didn't want to pay. They would not let me pay for the last year and a half because it was tied up in court. So I would be done. And there's a very good chance that PSLF is going to be gone by the time I'm allowed to make my 5 payments so that I can be done.
well, there's a
Which means,
student, there's a they have a plan for people like us.
oh, I'm sure they
So
have a plan for me.
they're raising it from 10 years to 20.
Oh, great.
Um, and which there's no desire to be in public service anymore. Um,
No.
I'm gonna be flat out honest with you, and this might break some of y'all's heart. I love being a librarian. It is my dream job that I didn't know was my dream job till I fell into it. New library people looking to go to library school, do not go to library school. No, don't do it. Don't do it. At least right now. I don't become a librarian. I mean, wait till 2026, 2028. I don't recommend becoming a librarian. And it breaks my heart to say that, because if you're looking to become a librarian, you're probably like me, and it will, like, the job will like make your heart full. But right now is not a good time to be in libraries. It's
Well, it's
just
not
not.
worth the stress. You're constantly under attack. The media is demonizing you left and right. People are accusing you of being a groomer and everything else. Even if, like, you're in a university working with university students and your specialty is political, right?
Yeah, that's one. I have a few subject areas because we're a small university. Normally, you just have one, but but politics, business, and government information are my specialty.
Right. So, with none of those things, are you grooming children? You're not showing them gay penguins, for God's sakes. And even if you were, they're
Nope,
19,
not
20
even the
year old
dual
kids,
enrollment.
Right? So it's
That
like you're being demonized for something you're not doing, and the pay is trash, and and you have no chance of getting out of your loans. Like, come on. Why would you do it?
yeah, and but that's the point. The point is to drive people from educate so that they can put in who they want educating children, universities. That the cruelty is not just the point; it's the feature. And um, they are trying to dumb us down to lower our standing of living. If you don't believe me, like, fine, but open your eyes. Like, and a lot of this I can't prove with data or an article or any, but I have read an unhealthy amount of information and studied World War II extensively and fascist regimes. I'm teaching a course in propaganda. And that's the first thing. You take out, you discredit the teachers, the librarians, the intelligent people, the universities. That's the first thing you do so that people don't know what's true and what's real anymore. So nothing Trump is doing makes sense because we're looking at it from a logical standpoint. It's much, much darker. So they're implementing an authoritarian regime. Wake up. Like, pay attention. Study like the 13 points of a fascist takeover. And then with a clear head, think about like things that Trump might be doing that could mirror some of the 13 concepts. And like,
Oh,
I
he
work at a
took that as a
university.
checklist.
He took that as a checklist, exactly. And go listen to famous scholars who write books and stuff about fascist regimes and all that kind of stuff. What I'm saying sounds alarmist, but it's not. It's if you actually are paying attention, it's really not. And they're almost done dismantling public education, both at a K-12 and higher ed level. Um, and it's really unfortunate because, like, yeah, maybe you owned the libs, but you did it. You cut your nose off to spite your face because, and it's not something that you see immediately. It's decades. It takes it'll be decades down the road before for some people to look back and be like, man, we fucked up.
Well, it's taken us since the Reagan era to realize all of the regulations and all of the safeguards that were pulled out starting with Reagan. I mean, the attacks on the media, the undermining of the press, all of that kind of stuff. It's been going on for decades. It was a slow roll. We're just seeing it now,
And now we're cooking.
sped up. Hmm.
And so it's really wild. Oh wow, we're getting to time, but um, you know, what is really effective, and I know this because I ingest an unhealthy amount of information, not from necessarily legacy media, but from, I mean, I listen to a lot of representatives and senators, both on the state and federal level. And what is effective is talking to calling, go to your representative's office. Don't be an asshole, be respectful, be civil, but an email is not enough anymore. And I'm gonna next week. I think I saved this for something real special about my representative is sending two different emails to, depending on what you write to him. The reason, like, what you get a different email. So we'll talk about that next time. But um, it taught and showing up to protests and that you can't tell me it doesn't work because they were looking, the Georgia state legislature was looking to criminalize, the school librarians have already been criminalized, but they were looking to criminalize public and academic librarians for if a minor 18 or younger gets their hands on an art book and God forbid sees the wrong version of David in a book, that could be considered indecency and all this stuff. And the guy who was pushing it was a former, not just professor, not just academic chair, not just the dean. He was the president of one of the Georgia universities, the fucking president. So he knows very well how academic libraries work and why that protection for all librarians used to be there, but particularly for public and academic, is because it's like adults, we cannot contract what a library collects based on if a child might see something, particularly in a college library, when most children are not in the library. Now, public universities and colleges, they can use a college library. There might be some limitations on rules, but anybody, you can walk into my library as a public patron and use stuff, look at stuff. You can't check books out, and students always have first priority. But you're welcome to use the library. And so to expect us to collect both electronically and in print based on if a child might see it is unreasonable, completely unreasonable. And
It's also
he
pretty
knows that.
yeah, it's also particularly unreasonable to expect a 17, 18, 19-year-old who's using a college library not to be able to handle seeing a naked body. Like, let's be
Exactly.
realistic. They're legal to marry, they're legal to go to war, and
Yes.
yet they can't see a naked body? Come on. Like, we all
They
were that
wanted to
age. You saw a
lower the
naked
marrying
body.
age. They wanted to
Exactly.
lower the marrying age in Georgia in particular. I don't think it happened, but I think you can be 17, you don't need your parents I think at 16 you need your parents' permission. Um and so a 16-year-old is good enough to get married, and we all know why a 16-year-old is getting married. Um
They're good
if,
enough to have a
if she's,
child, which means they've definitely
yeah,
seen some nudity. Come on.
yeah, so like the and if you're saying, Allison, you're overreacting, art, that's David is art. A teacher in Florida was fired over that because she showed the wrong version of David to a middle school who specialized in classical education. Now, if your middle school is specializing in classical education, it means Greek and Roman fucking styled art.
And they were all naked and it was all sexualized. It was all about the vices. Come on.
The Renaissance is the freaking about the human body. Everybody's
Hmm.
naked, but not all versions of David. Like the one where he looks really like feminine and has long flowy hair with the hat. He's got something covering himself, but there's the really famous one where he's like, like where I think he's pointing, and he's definitely full frontal. So there's one of David where he's crouched down and he's naked, but you can't see his uh his penis. So, but anyway, um,
It's that
so don't
puritanical
come.
culture.
Yeah. So but and see, that's how you can. That's a tell of what their intent is. If they're worried about the children, but they're also supportive of marrying at 14, I'm sorry, I just call bullshit because you just want to censor information. Because that's just absurd. That you'd be okay with a 14-year-old having a baby, but God forbid they see, and at our there are students who are 16, 17-year olds at any university because a lot of states, Georgia included, have a dual enrollment program where you can take college level classes while you're in high school, and it helps the student get ahead in college, saves them on paying for college credits. I think this I think the state is still paying, but it's like out of the school's budget. And so we have to, if we have, for every degree program we have to remain accredited, which Trump is trying to change who accredits universities. I digress. We have to be able to support that program. So a student can't be expected, the high school can't be expected to collect based on a college course. They have their own budgeting issues. So we have to be able to make sure that that student has access to the college library. And community colleges have this same program in Georgia. Our technical college system has dual enrollments as well for all sorts of trades, paralegal, all that kind of stuff. Um, so, but I have yet to have a dual enrollment student come to me with a question. No, that's a lie. I think in my 10 years I've been there, I think I've had two dual enrollment students, um, come to me for research help, or in my actual class, I've never had a dual enrollment. Probably because I'm an elective, but um, I digress. But yeah, it's just
But if they're
it's
old enough
wild.
and smart enough to do dual enrollment, they can handle
They can
adult
handle Naked
themes.
David and
I mean,
adult thing. Higher ed is not 13th grade. It's not.
exactly.
It's higher ed because you're thinking at a, get this, higher level. So it means questioning what you learned as a child. It means questioning your beliefs, your ideas. And I think one criticism I will say of higher ed is that it veered too left. Now, I'm not saying invite your local racist to come debate somebody, because is it thoughtful engagement or is it just racism? That's, you know, and and there is a difference. Like, racists just talk over you and they just want to say hateful things. Anybody who has a conservative worldview likely is in the true definition, what at one time it meant that you were just slower to spend that money. Is this the best way we can fix the problem? um, is there a way we can not have the government involved in paying for this? That's how I grew up understanding conservatism. It didn't have a whole lot to do with the idea, like the Christo
Culture
fascist
wars.
bullshit that, yeah, the culture war type stuff. So and my whole I went off on a slight tangent, but like I do, that's one criticism I do have, but a lot of times the people doing the criticism are racists who just want to say hateful things on campus. And you can't have it both ways. But they want it both ways. So,
Well, I don't know about your experience, but when I was in college, um, we were encouraged to debate, and our professor would intentionally ask questions that put you in that difficult position where you had to defend something you didn't necessarily agree with just to explore the logic behind it and the arguments being made. And um, I had lots of professors, I couldn't tell you where they fell on the political spectrum because that's not what it was about. But they would constantly push us to what does this mean? And then we would, people would say things and he wouldn't say, no, you're wrong. It would be like, that's interesting. Does anybody have a counterpoint to
mhm.
that? Or does anybody agree? Like we discussed it. We weren't told what to think. We were told we were learning how to think and debate and come to a conclusion about a lot of topics.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've told you this story, and maybe some of you who are listening now, like when, I grew up right outside New York City. So I had a very pro North version of the Civil War taught to me, not realizing it at the time. So I kind of had this like pedestal thinking, like, where I'm from the North, we don't do that sort of hateful shit. Obviously, I'm a kid, so, you know, and, or even as a young adult, obviously I'm not literally saying that, but I never would have thought about racism in the North during the Civil War, um, unless I had gone to college. And I would have never, if had I not gone to college in very northern New York, which is very vastly different than the city area and surrounding counties, um, literally in the middle of nowhere, right, I think it's 30 miles from the Canadian border. Um, I learned that the North almost lost, and how efficient and how awful some of Lincoln's generals were, and the real struggles and trials that the North had, um, that they almost lost the war. But you didn't see my parents calling up and being like, are you going to, first of all, my parents are Trump supporters. So anyway, but like, it's just wild how you teach history as it happened, and you get like this visceral anger now because they're trying to revise how history, what happened. And
Well,
that's
that's
unfortunate
exactly
because
what they're
they're not.
doing. His executive orders about K-12 education, specifically around history, they're not about teaching history. They're about teaching mythology. And I'm
Hmm.
sorry, that's not what history is. I can't change what happened. I'm not trying to justify it, but we can acknowledge that the facts show that on this date, this person said or did this thing, and that doesn't change just because you don't like it or it's inconvenient now. It is what it is.
Yeah, and my in my education, a lot of my friends were the children and grandchildren of Holocaust victims. And they started telling us about their stories. I remember in elementary school listening to a Holocaust survivor's story. And it was never like when as I got older and we had a Holocaust Remembrance Week because we had a massive Jewish population. So we also got all the Jewish holidays off as well. Um, but as I got older into high school, the stories became a little more darker, a little bit more graphic. And I remember being a kid and being very intrigued to hear their story. I felt bad, but not because I never once thought I was responsible or my German great grandmother was responsible or, never once did I think that. Like I felt bad because it's a sad topic and this person's telling me something horrible that happened to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I don't see how you can um I mean, the Germans acknowledged that the Holocaust happened. So, you know, and we're
Yeah, if
not
they can
teaching
teach
critical
about it in their
thinking.
schools today, why are we walking on eggshells around it? It doesn't make sense.
I watched if you there's a YouTube channel, Feely from Germany. She's from Germany, but she lives in um Cincinnati, I think. God bless her soul. Bless her heart. But she's lived here now probably for like 7, 8 years. And she met a boy and like I don't think they're married yet, but she came here as an exchange student and then fell in love with the country, then fell in love and but she did a whole segment on how Germans view the Holocaust. And from like first grade, you were taught about the Holocaust. And it's illegal to have swastikas. It's illegal to have outside of educational context. So, like a museum having a Nazi flag, that's not illegal. Flying it outside your truck or over the overpass, like those assholes in Florida, that's illegal in Germany. So, and it is intensely ingrained into them what happened, why it happened, and she went so far as to consult with somebody to form a poll to poll Germans that watch her channel how they feel about how they were taught about the Holocaust. And most of them said that they felt it was too much when, like, looking back in hindsight, but they're glad they had that much looking, with the hindsight because it's important stuff to know and to be a better person and to move forward as a better society. So Germans don't feel it's a dark stain on their history. They acknowledge it, they teach it, they and look at all the German children that are just fine. So, but you know what? Our kids aren't being taught to think like that. They're just going to be, think about even going back to my K-12 experience, when we think about how, I think about how I was taught, like, you have to teach critical thinking. Some people may just have it, most don't. And I was taught it. Like, I remember very specific lessons, particularly in history, where they made us read the Magna Carta and like asked questions to read between the lines of it. And I do not remember what questions they were. And they made us do so much group work. I hated group work. I still hate group work.
Mm,
But you know what?
right.
I can do it now because I deal with it as a kid. So, and that they don't do that kind of shit anymore. So, if you don't teach your kid how to critically think, they're not going to learn. And there's a lot of shit they're not going to learn. And I hate that I don't have the time because I have to donate plasma to pay my student loan. I'm not even kidding. Like I donated plasma today to in case my wages get garnished next month. So it's wild. Um so yeah, man, I'm a Debbie
Wild
Downer,
times.
aren't I? You do what you got to do.
Over.
They're literally taking my blood. No, actually, side note, I'm not embarrassed to donate blood. It is good money. Okay. Donating plasma is really quick, easy money if you are able to do it. I have to take iron pills because I'm anemic. And if I don't take them, my levels are too low, and then they're like, you can't donate. But a lot of a lot of the places that do it have bonuses. So I made $80 today just for 2 hours of my time, and it only took 2 hours because the last time I tried to do it, my levels were too low, and this week they were fine. But it's easy money, and you're saving a life. I don't really remember what all plasma is used for in the medical world, but I do know MS. A lot of MS patients. There's some treatment that it helps with. A lot of COVID people were using it for monoclonal antibodies. I don't know if they still are, but it helps somebody. So it's a win-win for me, and it's easy money.
I don't think there's even a plasma place around here now that I think about it. I think the closest one's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours away.
There used to only be one in my area, and it was kind of in the seedier part of town. But there was another one that opened up. Tell me how convenient this is. I couldn't do it today because I didn't eat before I had to go home because I didn't eat before I donated, and I needed to go home. But it's right by Aldi and Dollar General, so that's convenient for me. But yeah, so it's a lot easier to do, and they have a cool app now, so you don't have to like. It's so simple and easy. Everything is digital. Um, but yeah, some people are embarrassed, but like I have no issue because everyone you got it's more money faster than doing DoorDash or Uber or any of that other stuff. And I not only get my money, a life is helped, and it's a no brainer to me. But not everybody can do that. So you may not have a plasma center, or you might not physically be able to do it because you do have to be in relatively good health. You can't have certain conditions. If you lived in Europe, particularly the UK in the 90s, they get really freaked out by that, the mad cow thing. Um, so
Well, where else can you make $40 an hour? You can't do that with Uber Eats.
no, no, absolutely not. And I don't know what Uber driver. I did Uber when it first came to my area, and I did not like it. I think it's improved now. They didn't have tipping before, so you could get really screwed if somebody like asked to go through the drive-through. You weren't paid. That didn't make the fare any more expensive. So like you could really actually eat money um, if you got the wrong person. So but it's probably much better now. But I just I don't like people, but and there's often like promotion bonuses. Like I can make up to $700 this month. Um, if you refer people, you can get extra $100. Like with like there's no limit either. So like the nurse told me that this one guy brings in like 3 people a week. So
Mm-hmm.
he's making more doing the plasma gig than he is uh at his like his what do you call it? His full-time job. That's wild.
Well, hey, you made it yourself, so you should be able to sell it.
I know, but you really do got to eat before you do it. And I just don't like to eat in the morning. I just don't I probably should stick with more later afternoon, evening appointments. Um but I felt like just so like I not faint, not nauseous, but just like maybe lightheaded. I don't know. But I don't know. But we're almost at time. We didn't get to the main one of our main topics that we wanted to talk about, but I really want to really quick before we start heading out is I really want to encourage you all to take a look at the not that um, some of the spending bill because they're cloaking the language as they're doing. Oh, I think I hit a button. Okay, there we go. Really look at what the spending bill is that they. That's not the right one either. Maybe I just have to ran. Okay, instead we'll just talk about it. So anyway, the spending bill you really need to look at what they're aiming. They're cloaking the language as if they are that whole bullshit about waste, fraud, and abuse, but really they're cutting almost $800 million of Medicare, Medicaid. So that affects a lot of people. A lot of 40%, over 40% of children are on Medicaid at some point in their life. So that's really cutting some kids. And authoritarians love to go over the weak first, and you don't get much weaker, or not. I don't want to say weaker, vulnerable than children. So they're cloaking it in different language, but really what it boils down to is that they are trying to give the tax cuts to the wealthy. They're cloaking that language. They because Trump made promises that he has to keep. They're cloaking the language of what they're cutting from Medicare and Medicaid. I promise you, there is not $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse. And most waste, fraud, and abuse is committed not by the patient or the individual. It's by the um, provider. Is usually the source of the waste, fraud, and abuse. Just so you know that. But really look
When
into
they're
it. What
showing
they're
you where
cutting.
their priorities are, because the only increases in the budget are for the military and for border patrol. So immigration and military, that's it. Those are the only things getting more money. And all the things being cut are the things that affect everyday people. It's cuts to all
Absolutely,
of the
yeah,
social services and safety nets.
yeah, and they work. I mean, imagine during COVID if we could fully fund Social Security. You know what we would have needed to do? Give out stimulus. Hear me out on this. If Social Security was fully funded and really used as it's intended to be, which is a social safety net, they could have given us like a one-time withdrawal from our Social Security funds instead of a stimulus and spending extra money. It's already money that's supposed to be there. I don't know if it actually is, but
That they've
so
borrowed against it a couple of times.
yeah, that's true. I don't know budgeting on the federal level like that, but yes, Rick Scott, that asshole. He is the biggest proponent of cutting Medicare and Medicaid, and he stole the most out of Medicare and Medicaid. He stole it. Don't let he stole it from Florida, and then somehow got elected governor. This country is fucked up. Like how that happens.
Well,
How do we
this
elect a
is
president that led an insurrection? Like
that's true. Um, unpopular opinion, but it bothers me a great deal that the increases are to the military when the Pentagon hasn't passed their last 7 audits, and to Border Patrol, which, look at some of the stuff they're doing right now. It's insane, but we can't fund, cancer research for children, or SNAP, or these basic things. Like, the average person is not going to benefit from military spending unless they're a veteran, a contractor, someone who owns shares in one of those things, or we're being invaded. And his whole purpose on running was to get us out of these wars, and yet the reason they're justifying for increasing military spending is to fight off these threats. It's like, well, stop pissing people off, bro.
Yeah. And it call your representatives, get in their face, attend protests. I had started saying this, but I heard there was like 10 to 12,000 people at the Atlanta um, April 5th protest, which was right before the vote to criminalize librarians, and it failed. I think there was a lot. I don't think it was just the protests, but I think that helped immensely. I think the governor is also trying to run for Senate. He knows the state, and he knows Georgia will vote conservative unless the crazy is too much. I know that's a very scientific way of putting it, but, and you're going to say, but Allison, they voted for Trump. They forgot the crazy of his first term, and the crazy that they associated with Kamala was too much for them to vote for a Democrat. I also think some shady shit happened with our. I can't prove that. I'm not going to go in there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but look at our last past state elections. And I'm talking when we vote as a state. I realize Marjorie Taylor Greene is elected here every 2 years. That's in Rome, Northwest Georgia. That ain't the whole state. So, but anyway, I think Kemp had a lot to do with. I can't prove it. I can't prove that one bit. But I think he's a smart dude politically. So anyway, before we head out, I just wanted to also do the promotions and share the socials. Let's get that up there. So this is our link tree. That is in the description. Check this out if you haven't. It's a tracker for Project 2025 to see the progress. I look at this stuff daily, and I am shocked every time I see it to see how far it's got. Because they flood the zone, so you can't. It's impossible, even for people like me, to keep track of everything all at once. If you don't know how to find your representative, I have a tutorial. AOC says calling your representative works. And here's some different ways you can find your representative's number. I've had some issues with congress.gov, the website. Sometimes it will pull an error message. So that's why I put in other ways that you can find who your representative is, because I do not 100% trust their web sources anymore. And not even just the content I'm talking about the actual working website. The 3% rule, this gives you, if you're really needing some hope, this isn't hopium, this is scientifically proven. Erica Chenoweth found that if 3.5% of the population engages in nonviolent resistance, that authoritarianism can be overthrown. And she's studied this for the last 25, 30 years at Harvard, I think. Harvard or Yale. But so that there is a General Strike US. They operate under the 3.5 rule, and they do a lot of great work, so check them out. They also have links to other organizations for more localized. They're sort of like indivisible in the respect that they have like the main national branch, but it's really about grassroots movement. So like there's different chapters in different areas, and if you live in a big city, often there's more than one chapter. So check them out. And to find out more stuff, the Library of Democracy Substack. This has got to be changed, I realize. But if you want to support the channel, me and Leah in our work, buy us a coffee, bookshop.org. If you buy anything, especially if you're looking to break off of Amazon and not enrich Jeff Bezos, bookshop.org is a great substitute. I have an audiobook substitute for you next week, but they are often the same price as Amazon. Book prices don't really fluctuate all that much between sites. They are more for print books, but they do have a lot of the newer content. They have ebooks that you can download, and anything you purchase, we get a tiny percentage that you don't pay. It's just a referral link. And ways you can buy us a coffee. Check out our bookstore of titles that we recommend and that we've talked about through the Tony Michaels podcast. And speaking of which, thank you, Tony, for letting us use StreamYard. Head to his channel and check him out and some of the great stuff that he's doing. Hold on. I don't have a producer, so it's just me. So, anything else did I forget? I'm sure I forgot something.
No, definitely check out the Library of Democracy on Substack, and Tony Michaels also has a Substack called the Kaufman Chronicles that is daily news as well.
I want to, before we go, I want to address this. MTG is very good fucking luck. That would be the greatest gift. The greatest gift to Georgia would be her being the Republican candidate. The greatest gift. I will say with confidence, unless our shit's rigged, which who knows, but no one if she wins, I'll know because it's rigged, because the state will not vote for her. No way. No, if we couldn't vote for Herschel Walker, do you really think Georgia's going to vote for her? Like, I mean, let's be real. Yeah. I mean, she's only appreciated in her district. Remember back in 2021, her and Matt Gaetz tried to do that Save America tour bullshit, and they went to like a few places outside of their districts, and it was a dud, and no one showed up because they're only appreciated in their districts. That's it. Even within Florida, Matt Gaetz wasn't appreciated. I mean, whatever district he was in, y'all are crazy. I'm sorry. Y'all need help for voting for him. But anyway, just wanted to say that. That would be the greatest gift to Democrats. Pending our things aren't rigged. I think that if Brian Kemp is trying to get the nomination, I think our shit's going to be all right. But you know what? Stranger things have happened. I'll know if she wins. I'll know it's rigged. There's no way she'd get elected. If Herschel Walker couldn't get elected, there's no way she's getting elected. If his crazy was too much, her crazy is just makes heads explode. But the Democrats are picking I don't think they're picking terrible candidates too. So, they're picking candidates nobody knows about. They're the former mayor of Atlanta. She wasn't very popular when she was mayor, and I don't know. She's not a very eloquent speaker. Like, we need somebody that draws attention in a good way. And she, like, when she was mayor, she did not, I mean, people in Atlanta didn't even, a part of Atlanta tried to secede from Atlanta. That's how much they disliked her. But Longbottom, I forgot what her last name is. It's not coming to me, but it's all right. So, anything else? What am I forgetting? I'm probably forgetting something, but there's always next time. I'm going to change the thumbnail.
Support independent media, and if you can, donate to NPR and PBS, etc.
Yes, if you're at charities, NPR, PBS, St. Jude's, They're doing really good work. Also, um, I'm saying this as a librarian. Depending on the topic, I don't trust legacy media. When you're doing your fact checking, check independent media. There's a lot of great independent reporters that do like fantastic reporting. That it's wild. So really, uh, broaden your horizons when it comes to media because there's some great reporters doing some phenomenal work, and it's really a crying shame. My dream used to be to um, work at the New York Times in like their book review section, and now I'm just like, that's all right. I just, what a bummer. All right, friends. Well, that is it for today. Thanks for joining our inaugural episode, and we will see you later. Have a great night and have a great coming week. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye, friends.